Hi, and welcome back to Shelf Esteem Issues with me, Robin, for episode 4, Back on Track. I just want to start by saying I am sorry, you guys. Why, you ask? Well, I know episode 3 was not what you expected, and I know I let you down. I think I got a little off track and off topic. I was so excited about reading the book and getting the information out there that I got a little crazy and a lot of sidetracking, and I just want to apologize for that. And I know I realize I didn't give you enough information or any explanation about the book itself. The main reason that I started this podcast, right, was for books. So again, my apologies. I also realize I did it uncut and raw, and that's sloppy and unprepared, and that's not how I roll. Not usually, anyway. There are times, but that's another story, and I'm not going off track this time. So, with that being said, I will be better prepared for this episode, and going forward, I will move this hot mess express back on its tracks and get back to why are we here. Scout's honor, pinky promise, whatever it is that you agree to. So, first of all, let's begin by recapping last week's chapters and then jumping into this week's. Because as you know, I read chapter 1 through 7. And again, I don't feel like I gave you the full brief of it. So I want to just give you a little recapping, and then we'll go back to the chapters that I read for this week. So what happened in those chapters sets the story up. And I really want you to get a better feel for the book, because you know, if you want to read it, you obviously need someone to give you a reason to. So let's just recap really quick. Chapters 1 through 7, written and read by Anne Bishop. It begins in a world where humans are not the dominant species. The land belongs to the others, shapeshifters, vampires, and ancient elemental beings. And humans exist only by permission. The imbalance of power sets the tone immediately in this book. There's no doubt about it. Like there's just, you just can already tell who is the main characters, who is the antagonistic characters. Like just, it starts right from the beginning. And in the beginning, we meet Meg. She's a young woman. Her name is fully Meg Corbin. She's running from a human institution known as the Controllers. They exploit people that have foresight. They're prophets. They can see the future. Meg has these visions. They come through cutting her skin, which in the book, when you start reading, it's gonna blow your mind, just the way that this was put together and what they actually have to do to have these visions. This has left her traumatized, socially inexperienced, and desperate for escape. She's had nowhere else to go. She doesn't know anything about the outside world. She only knows what was in the complex that she lived in. And she finds herself in the cold, alone. That's where our leader of the courtyard comes in, this Simon Wolfguard. And he's a wolf, obviously. I told you in episode 3 the names Wolfguard, Hawkguard, Crowguard. It gives you the creatures that they portray when they're not in human form. But she finds herself in this courtyard called Lakeside. It's territory ruled by the others. Humans are only there if they're allowed. And Simon and the rest of its inhabitants are basically all different creatures. Meg doesn't behave like other humans. She doesn't fear the others properly, doesn't understand social norms, and clearly carries deep emotional scars as well as physical scars. The early chapters, they establish both her vulnerability and the constant threat posed by the human world that wants her returned and controlled. In chapters 8 through 16, it gets a little more in depth, but the story slows down. It slows down in action, but grows significantly in emotional depth and tension. Much of this section focuses on Meg's adjustments to life in the courtyard, and the others struggle to understand her. Meg begins to experience something entirely new, safety, something that she's not used to. She's used to being caged and trapped and like an animal, and she's being treated by, quote unquote animals better than humans treated her. No one locks her up or demands her visions. At the same time, her trauma becomes more visible. Her literal thinking, lack of self-preservation, and confusion about everyday interactions make it clear how badly she was treated by humans. These moments are often uncomfortable, but they're crucial to understanding who Meg is. This book does have moments where you're definitely cringing to the thought of what she's going through, or just how the descriptions of certain things come out. Simon's perspective becomes especially important in these chapters. As a wolf shifter, his instincts tell him Meg is fragile and potentially dangerous. Yet he also starts to feel responsible for her well-being. His internal conflict between predator instincts and a growing sense of duty to protect this girl, to do something for this human, adds a quiet but persistent tension to this story. It just gives it you can't tell what's actually going on. Is this him feeling for her in a lover's way, or is this him in his nature of a wolf that's supposed to protect his pack? The world building, it just continues naturally through everyday events. We see how quickly the others react when boundaries are crossed, and how little tolerance they have for human interference. This section reinforces a key idea of the novel. Humans are only powerful when the others allow them to be. Meg's foresight explodes during the sections. They're particularly unsettling when the others begin to understand what her visions cost her physically and emotionally. Their reactions sharply contrast with those of the controllers. Instead of trying to profit from her ability, they are disturbed by it. The difference challenges the reader's assumptions about who the real monsters are, humans versus the others. Excuse me. The themes that I feel like, and impressions that kind of came across so far between chapters 1 and 16 are, there's several major themes. They're starting to take shape in these chapters. Control versus choice, especially regarding Meg's body and abilities, power and restraint, and who can be trusted with authority, what it means to be human beyond biological or appearance. While the pace is slow, it feels intentional. The tension builds through small interactions rather than dramatic events, making the emotional stakes feel earned. The relationships, especially between Meg and Simon, are still fragile, but they are clearly evolving. These chapters deepen the story rather than advance it quickly. They invite you to sit with discomfort, observe power dynamics, and question traditional ideas of good and evil. By this point, it's clear that Meg's presence is already changing the courtyard, and that those changes may come at a cost once the human world pushes back. So that's chapters 1 through 16, and I hope that's a better description that gives you a little more openness to the book and gives you some intrigue to want to read it, because it's really getting interesting. There's some plot twists in there, and it's starting to come together, midway through. I put together some discussion questions, keeping this in the true nature of a book club style podcast. So I'm going to go through some of those questions, and I'm going to answer them how I would if we were sitting, in our living rooms, drinking our tea, our coffee, our wine, whatever you would be having at your book club, or out at the coffee house, wherever you would be meeting. I'm going to just go through some of these questions and the answers that I think, and it's also going to give you a little more into these chapters as well. So, question number 1, how does the novel change the typical idea that humans are the dominant species? The book flips the usual fantasy hierarchy, right, by making humans the ones who must ask permission to exist, rather than the animals existing for the humans, rather than the humans controlling, our vampires and trying to get a hold of them, and the vampires are the werewolves, or, all the mythical creatures. Anything in that fantasy style is usually hiding from that human world. Instead of ruling through intelligence or numbers, humans rely on negotiation and arrogance, assuming the others won't retaliate. This makes human power feel temporary and borrowed, which creates tension and highlights how fragile human authority really is. Question 2, why do you think Meg's behavior confuses and unsettles the others so much? Well, because Meg doesn't act out of fear or self-interest the way most humans do. She's honest to a fault. She just takes things so literally and doesn't understand when she's in danger. This confuses the others because they expect humans to lie, bargain, and panic because that's what they've come in contact with all these years. Meg's behavior forces them to see her as an individual rather than just that human prey. In what ways do chapters 18 through 16 reveal the lasting impact of Meg's trauma? This is question number 3. Meg's trauma shows up in subtle but consistent ways. Her difficulty making decisions, her willingness to hurt herself for others, and her inability to imagine a future for herself. These chapters make it clear that her captivity didn't just hurt her physically. It shaped how she understands worth, safety, and choice. Number 4, do you think Simon's protectiveness towards Meg is instinct, responsibility, or something else? I think she's vulnerable and he's wired to protect his territory. Over time, it shifts her towards responsibility as he realizes how badly she's been treated by humans. There are hints that it could become something deeper, but at this stage it feels more like confusion than affection to me. Number 5, how does Anne Bishop use everyday moments to build tension instead of action scenes? Simple interactions like conversations, meals, or misunderstandings carry weight because the consequences are always implied. The others could become violent instantly, instantly, excuse me, even if they don't. This makes ordinary moments feel dangerous and keeps the tension simmering rather than exploding. Who seems more dangerous so far, the others or the human institutions? This is question 6. I'm gonna say the others are openly dangerous, but their rules, they're pretty clear. However, human institutions, like the controllers, are more unsettling because they disguise cruelty as order and necessity. The book, it suggests that predictable danger may be safer than exploitation wrapped in legality. Number 7, why is the courtyard an important symbol in the story? The courtyard represents a fragile middle ground where coexistence is possible, but not guaranteed. It's a space. It's governed by the others, yet dependent on humans following rules they don't fully understand. Meg's presence exposes how easily this balance can be disrupted. Number 8, what does Meg's blood prophecies suggest about the cost of knowledge. Now, her visions, they show that knowledge isn't free. It demands pain and sacrifice. The fact that her ability harms her, empathetically, the ethical question of whether knowing the future is worth the damage. It causes her more pain than anything, especially when others want to benefit from it without sharing the cost. How do the others' reactions to Meg's visions differ from the controller's reactions? The controllers, they see Meg's vision as a resource, cash money cow, The others see them as disturbing and wrong. Even though the others are capable of violence, they seem uncomfortable with suffering that serves no natural purpose. Their violence is to feed. They're out hunting. They're hunters. That complicates the idea of who's truly moral, the humans or the others. Number 10, what role does fear play in this world and who controls it? I would say fear is the primary currency of power. The others control it openly, using it to enforce the boundaries. Humans try to manipulate fear. It's behind the scenes through the institution and laws, just like we kind of have in the real world. The difference, though, is the transparency. Everyone knows when the others are dangerous. But human cruelty hides behind that bureaucracy. Number 11, how does Meg redefine what strength looks like in the novel? Meg isn't strong. Not in the traditional sense. She's physically fragile and emotionally wounded. Yet her ability to survive, to keep choosing kindness, and to keep moving forward despite fear, it refrains strength as endurance rather than dominance. Just a couple more, my friends. Number 12, what expectations do the others have about humans and how does Meg disrupt them? They expect humans to be selfish, manipulative, and motivated by fear. This is how they've portrayed humans for hundreds of years. Meg disrupts this by being sincere and she's unpredictable. Not because she's clever, because she wasn't taught these things. She lacks the learned behaviors that come from power struggles. This makes her both fascinating and dangerous to the others. Number 13, do you think Meg is safer with the others than she was with the humans? Me personally, only conditionally. The others won't exploit her abilities, but her safety, it really depends on their continued interest and the restraint. Unlike with humans, she isn't owned, but her security is still fragile and really, could disappear if circumstances change. These are still predators. These are still animals that are eating humans for prey. They're still, you do something wrong and they eat you. That's their philosophy. That's their go-to. Just, you messed up, you're dead. And we're gonna live off of you for the next couple of days. Well, in the wolf cases, it depends on how many wolves, right? Could be an hour. Number 14, how do these chapters prepare the reader for future conflict? They quietly stack pressure. Human forces are circling. Meg's abilities are becoming harder to ignore. And the courtyard, it's already bending its rules to accommodate her. She's living in a building that's meant for just the others. No humans are even supposed to step foot in this building. And she has her own apartment. The lack of immediate conflict makes it clear that something larger and more dangerous is being set up. She's there for a reason, but we we see the stalkers and the people that are showing up in these random cars that don't normally come through Lakeside Courtyard. And there's definitely threats all around. And number 15, what questions are you left with at the end of chapter 16? Me, right now, I'd have to say, I'm wondering who will try to claim Meg next. How far the others will go to protect or control her, maybe. I'm not sure if they're going to weaponize her against the humans yet, but I'm thinking, I don't know. There's points in the book that might push that way. And also whether peaceful coexistence is truly possible in a world built on unequal power, which unequal power is what we live with, everywhere. But here I'm wondering, will the roles switch? Will humans be back on top, in that normal way, or will Meg make peace? There's still a lot of questions that I have that I can't wait to jump into, into the next chapters. But that's all I have for now. So join me next Friday. I'm going to read chapters 17 through 24, another 8 chapters, and we'll hear what happens next to Meg, Simon, and all the other characters. And again, I'll be back to give you a more in-depth book club theory reading. But that is all for tonight. Thank you, my book dragons. Until next week, till thine own self be true. BB.